Hi, Virgo is here with a weekly reading. This reading could resonate with anyone who has Virgo strongly in their chart, Sun, Moon, Rising, and Venus. And I will have an extended reading. The extended reading will dig deeper into the story that's down here on the table before us and then move it forward. All right, let's get started. Someone is talking about you, not to you, about you. And somewhere in your body, maybe you already felt it, that strange prickling at the back of the neck, that inexplicable feeling of being watched without seeing eyes, that moment where your name felt present in a room you weren't in. You dismissed it probably. Told yourself you were imagining things, kept moving, kept performing the routine. But the feeling didn't leave. It never fully leaves that particular kind of knowing that lives below the mind and above the skin. So let's talk about what's really happening. Let's go in. There is something deeply unsettling about being discussed in your absence. Not because it's unusual. People talk. They always have. Words move through the dark like water through cracks, finding every opening, pooling in places you didn't know existed. What unsettles is this. Somewhere out there, a version of you is being constructed. Without your hands, without your voice, without your corrections. Someone is drawing you from memory, and memory is always partial, always filtered, always colored by what the person doing the remembering needs you to be. And that version of you, that shadow portrait, is moving through the world right now, landing in ears that have never met you, settling into minds that will carry it as fact. That's a particular kind of vulnerability. The kind that has nothing to do with what you did or didn't do. The kind that comes simply from being known by people who are imperfect at knowing. I want to talk about who does the talking. Not with contempt, with curiosity. Because the one who carries a rumor, who picks it up, holds it, passes it forward, they are never just talking about you. They never are. There is always something underneath, a wound that found your name and decided to wear it for a while, an unresolved thing in them that couldn't stay quiet any longer and needed somewhere to land, a gap between who they wanted to be in relation to you and who they ended up being. And the gap became a story, and the story became a rumor, and the rumor became the only version of events they could live with. This doesn't make it harmless. It doesn't erase the sting, but it changes the shape of it. Because when you understand that the rumor was never really about you, it was always about them. Something shifts in how you carry it. Hold on. I want to ask you something before we go further. And I'm not asking for an answer out loud, just for you to feel where this lands. When you first heard or first suspected that something was being said about you, what was your first instinct? Was it anger? That hot, immediate thing that rises fast and wants to act, wants to correct, wants to find the source and shut it down? Or was it something quieter and more complicated? A kind of collapse inward, that sinking feeling that maybe somehow you deserved it, that maybe there's something in the rumor that found purchase in you because some part of you already believed it. That second one, that's the one I want to stay with because it's quieter and it does more damage and it almost never gets named. There are people who can hear the worst things said about them and feel nothing but righteous indignation. Clean, simple, untouched at the core. And then there are people, and perhaps you are one of them, who hear a rumor and somewhere beneath the offense, beneath the hurt, beneath the anger, feel a terrible private question begin to form. Is it true? Not the specific thing, but the feeling underneath it. Am I what they say? Am I the version of me that circulates in other people's mouths when I'm not in the room? That question is the real wound, not the rumor itself. And it's not new. It was there before this rumor. It will be there after. It predates whoever started talking. It comes from a place much older and much closer than any of them. The cinder again. I keep returning to it because I think some of you have spent years quietly, without announcing it, trying to be someone that people wouldn't talk about. Someone safe, someone palatable, someone whose edges were smooth enough not to catch on anyone. You softened yourself, dimmed yourself, chose careful words, held back the parts of you that felt too big, too much, too likely to be misread. And they talked anyway. Let that land. You made yourself smaller to avoid this exact thing, and it happened anyway. Which means the smallness was never the solution. It was just a tax you paid on a protection that was never actually guaranteed. I'm not sure why, but this feels important right now. The people who get talked about most are almost never the ones who did the most harm. They're the ones who refused to disappear, the ones who kept taking up space even when the room made it uncomfortable, the ones whose presence, whose very existence disturbed something in the people around them. Disturbance is not the same as wrongdoing. Sometimes you disturb people simply by being something they haven't figured out how to categorize, by having a quality they can't possess and can't dismiss, by reminding them, without trying, of something in themselves they've been avoiding. And so they talk because talking is a way of managing what they can't contain, because your name in their mouth gives them the illusion of control over something that made them feel powerless. Now, the part that might bring tears, not because it's painful, though it might be, but because sometimes the truth arrives and it cracks something open in the best possible way, like pressure releasing, like a splinter finally worked free after too long. Here it is, the rumor about you, whatever form it takes, whoever is carrying it, however far it has traveled. It is not your definition. Wait, I know that sounds simple. I know you've heard versions of that before, but I'm not talking about the surface of that sentence. I'm talking about what's underneath it. The definition of you, the real one, the full one, the one that accounts for everything you've survived and everything you've chosen and everything you've quietly held without anyone seeing, that lives in you, not in their mouths, not in the story they constructed in your absence, not in the version of you that travels secondhand through people who only ever had a partial view. They were working from a fragment, and you are the whole. Let me talk about the broken key one more time. There is a version of you, the one that existed before you learned to be careful, before you learned to monitor how you were being perceived, before you understood that the world could construct a version of you and send it out without your permission. That version of you was whole in a way that didn't require anyone's approval to remain whole. Somewhere along the way, you handed that wholeness over. Not all at once, piece by piece, one disappointment at a time, one misrepresentation, one betrayal, one room where you realized the story being told about you had nothing to do with who you actually were, and you started trying to manage it. To curate yourself carefully enough that the gap between the real you and the talked about you would be small enough not to hurt. But the key to who you are, jagged, imperfect, worn down in all the right places, it was never in their hands. Even when it felt like it was, even in the worst moment, when the worst thing was being said in the worst room by the person you least expected, even then, the key was still yours. And here is what I want to say about the tears, because the title of tonight promised you tears, and not the painful kind, the releasing kind. Maybe the tears come when you really realize in the body, not just the mind, that you have been trying so hard to control a narrative that was never fully yours to control. That you have been exhausting yourself managing the echo of yourself that lives in other people's perceptions, and that the exhaustion, that particular deep bone tired feeling, could stop. Not because the rumor stops, not because people suddenly see you clearly, but because you decide quietly, without announcement, without anyone seeing, the moment it happens is less than #0. 5 hashes greater than that. Their version of you is not the court that tries you. That you are not on trial. That the verdict was never theirs to give. The labyrinth of other people's opinions, you've been walking it for a long time. Same walls, different lighting, different names, same architecture. And every time you try to find the exit by becoming more acceptable, more palatable, more careful, the labyrinth just added another corridor. The exit is not in there. The exit is the moment you stop needing to find it. Let me slow down for a second, because I don't want to leave you with something that sounds like indifference. This is not about not caring what people think. Caring is human. Wanting to be seen accurately, wanting your name to carry something true that is not vanity, that is the basic human need to exist in the world without being erased or distorted. What I'm pointing to is something more specific. The difference between caring how you're seen and building your entire interior architecture around it. The difference between wanting to be understood and needing understanding from every person in every room at every cost. Some people will never see you clearly, not because you failed to show them, but because they were never looking at you. They were looking at the space where you stood and seeing the outline of something else entirely. Something from their own history, their own unfinished business, their own shadow. You cannot correct a misperception that was never about you to begin with. We're near the end, and I want to close in the quiet, without drama, without a crescendo. Because what tonight is really about underneath the rumor, underneath the talking, underneath the version of you moving through other people's conversations is this: who are you when no one is watching? Who are you in the silence between being perceived? Who are you in the room alone with no audience, no performance, no careful management of how you land? That person, that quiet, unwitnessed, real person, is the only version of you that has ever actually mattered. Not the rumor, not the reputation, not the story being carried in someone else's mouth through rooms you'll never enter. That person, the one right here, right now, listening in the dark. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Your own knowing is the only verdict worth anything. 2 questions for the quiet or for the comments if you want to share. What part of yourself have you been shrinking to manage how others perceive you? And what would change if you stopped trying to correct the version of you that lives in other people's minds? Sit with those without rushing, gently. I'll see you in the next one.